Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Jake Riley. I'm originally from Bellingham, Washington. I went to Seaholm High School and also Fairhaven Middle School. Where are you guys? What
Mount
town are you
Vernon.
guys in? Yeah. Okay. Mount Vernon. Nice. Yeah. So I graduated high school in 2007. Um, while I was there, I ran cross country and track and field. So in high school, I was a state champion in cross country. We were team state champions. We won track title as well. Um, I was also I qualified for a couple of national races, and that got me recruited by Stanford University to run cross country and track and field for them. So I started at Stanford in 2007. I graduated in 2012, where I majored in biomechanical engineering. Um, let's see, we had a few team titles there. Oh yeah, there we go. There's some good pictures of me. I had a little bit more hair then.
What
Right
year was
choice.
that, Jake? What in this picture?
That looks like 2006. Yeah,
Junior
I
or
think that's
senior
my
year?
that would have been my senior year. That was senior
Okay.
year districts, I think. That is also senior year from a little bit earlier on when I had the real afro going.
I love
Yeah,
this
good
picture
thinking
because
back
it's
then.
got your mom and your dad photobombing in the background.
Yeah,
Have they seen
yeah.
this picture?
Yeah, they have, and it's been commented on before. And I think, if I'm not entirely sure about this. Yep, this is from Sunfair. So my forehead looks a little bit weird there because 4 days earlier I'd been stung in the forehead by a bee. It got caught in my hair and then stung me right between the eyes.
What?
So my face was swollen like a week. But yeah, that was a really big race for me. I won that race, so that was exciting.
Which race was this again?
The Sunfair Invitational over in Yakima.
Okay, so is it like a preseason thing?
No, this was kind of middle of the season. It's one of the
Yeah.
bigger invitationals early in the year.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
When I knew you in high school, when you were in high school, I could always tell you from a mile away by your hair.
Yes.
Yeah, I could
That
see
was
you right.
part of the point. We had a tradition in high school that we would shave our heads for the state meet, and so
Mhm.
uh,
I
I
think I
kind
have a
of
picture of
thought,
that
yeah. So there's
right
Mason.
here.
Yep, there's me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought it might be fun to just grow my hair from one shaving to the next. That was a year's worth of hair growth.
Wow. Okay. And I think I
Yeah.
got you here at Stanford.
No, so that was the state meet right there. Not sure. Oh, that's Sunfair again.
Yeah.
So
This
this
is
is the Foot Locker National Championships. So this is a national meet that I qualified for. We had to run a regional race in San Diego or in Mount Sac, California, and
mhm.
then you qualify for this. So it's the 40 best guys and the 40 best girls from around the country. That guy in the black right behind me is Matthew Centurist, who is the 1500 meter gold medalist.
Wow.
So yeah, there were some pretty good people at that race, and that was a really big deal for me because before I made that race, I was not being recruited by anybody, and then after that race, Stanford started talking to me in University of Oregon.
Wow. Okay, so to Stanford, tell us about Stanford.
Yeah, so I was recruited by a bunch of colleges out of high school. I decided to go to Stanford because it's one of the best universities academically in the country, and it's also really, really good for distance running. It's one of the top programs for the distances I wanted to run. So this is us at the pre-national meet in Terre Haute, Indiana. This is me and two of my teammates. We went 1, 2, 3 in that race. While I was there, I mostly did the 5,000 and 10,000 meters in track and field, and then I also was a All-American a couple times in cross country. Let's see, my sophomore year, we were third at NCAA's overall. My highest finishes were I was third in the 10,000 meters on the track. 10,000 meters is 6.2 miles for anybody that's not really into metric. I was also sixth at NCAA's in cross country. Um, yeah, so I did a victory lap. I had some extra eligibility, so I did 5 years instead of 4. Um, yeah, it was just it's a great time. College is a lot of fun.
Really, really briefly, tell us about the academics at Stanford because it's got a great running program, but it's really known for its academics. Can you tell us a bit about that? I mean, how challenging was it?
Yeah, So I don't know what the acceptance rate is now, but when I was going there, it was like, I don't know, maybe 2% or something like that, or 3%. And I think it's only gone down since then. It's a really, really competitive school. So certainly there were a lot of demands to try and balance running and athletics. And so, I don't know, one of the ways they explained it to us when we first got there was you have essentially 3 different aspects of your life. You have kind of your school part, your social part, and then your running part. And you can really only be good at 2 of them. So I was not a very social person. We didn't do a lot of the partying or any of the things you see in college movies. It was a lot of early bedtimes and trying to get problem sets done. I probably, I don't know. I majored in biomechanical engineering, but I also majored in track. So I probably didn't pay quite as much attention to my studies as I otherwise should have. So I got a lot of B's. We'll put it that way. So yeah, it was certainly challenging to balance it sometimes. Stanford is on a quarter system, which means that when you're taking finals, that's the same time of year that you have your national championships for each of the sports, which is cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track. So I remember I was at the NCAA outdoor track championships, and I had to take a biology final in between my 10,000 meter and my 5,000 meters. So I was in a hotel room trying to take a final and also trying to prepare for a race. So it was certainly a balance at times, but at the same time, I think I had a really unique experience based on or compared to what other people are doing. So it was good.
Okay. Did you ever run against University of Washington?
Oh yeah. So Stanford is in the Pac-10, which is the Pac-12 now. So yeah, we saw University of Washington a ton. And also in winter, we run indoor track. So instead of running on an outdoor track like that one, you're just inside of a building. And University of Washington has the only one on the West Coast, or the only good one. So we were up at University of Washington, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 times a year. I raced a lot of University of Washington guys.
Yeah. Okay, so you graduated from Stanford, and then?
So out of college, I joined the Hanson's Distance Project, which is a long-distance training group based out of Rochester, Michigan. This is my first race in the Hanson's uniform. This is the 2012 Olympic track trials in the 10,000 meters. There was a big old puddle on the backstretch. It was pouring down rain. Yeah, so I joined the Hanson's because I knew that I wanted to move up to longer distances. Every time in my career I've moved up to a longer distance, I've had more success. So, in high school I ran the 3,200. In college I ran the 10,000. Both of those.
Kind of froze up on us, Jake. You there? Jake? You froze on us, Jake. Oh, I think he'll probably join us again here in a second. Everybody just hold tight. One second. Wait just a second, guys. Hopefully he's going to join us back here in a second.
Doesn't look like he is. He's not. He's definitely.
Yep, just hold on a second, guys. I'm sure he's going to try to join us again. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about this. Our internet has been on the fritz for months now.
Okay.
All right, am I back? Am I clear?
Yes.
Okay.
So we lost you when you were talking about how, as you increased your distances, if you went from 5,000 to 10,000, you kind of performed better.
Yeah, every time I've moved up in distance, I've been more successful. So when I went professional, I wanted to move up to the marathon, which is essentially the longest Olympic event you can do. So the Hanson's training group is one of the better marathon training groups in the country. They've had a lot of success, and so yeah, I wanted to join them and work with their coaches.
Okay. So you moved to Colorado, and that's where you are now, right?
Yeah, so I moved here at the end of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm part of a different training group now. I run with Team Boulder, originally Boulder Track Club. So yeah, this is that's my uniform. This is the start line from the 2020 Olympic Marathon Trials in Atlanta.
Now I have to tell you that Bernard Lagat is one of my personal heroes, and for you to have beat him is super cool.
Well, I had to move up to a distance that is, what, 10 times longer than his normal one or something like that?
But still, for you to line up with Bernard Lagat and to beat him is a really cool thing.
Yes, it's very exciting. I mean, I've been watching Bernard since I was in high school. And yeah, that was a big deal.
And so everybody also, so this is Bernard Lagat here. He's a famous Olympian. He's been in the Olympics, I don't know, like 4 or 5 times.
I think he's, yeah, at least 5 Olympic teams.
And this is Galen Rupp. I don't know why he's sitting down.
I think 3 or 4 times. I think he was resting his legs, but yes, that's Galen.
So this is Galen Rupp. He was the guy who finished first. And in the Olympic trials, for everybody who doesn't know, the first 3 people that finish this race are the ones that will represent our country in the Olympics. So Galen Rupp took first. And Jake, if you don't mind, I want to show the finish. Can I do that?
Sure.
Okay. Just to kind of give everybody some context.
Conditions in LA 4 years ago. Cold, breezy conditions here in Atlanta, Georgia. 2 very, very different Olympic marathon trials.
Just to pause for a second. So this is Galen Rupp, right? He kind of ran out on his own at the end here, but the pack behind them consisted of 3 runners, and it was really exciting because only 2 of them were going to advance to the Olympics. So it must have been really anxious at that point, I'm sure.
Yes. There's yeah, I mean, you can see how big the crowd is, and it was that way for the whole last couple miles. And yeah, it's very, very nerve-wracking knowing there's 2 people, or there's 2 spots and 3 people going for him.
Phenomenal performance. Can Jacob Riley hang on from Leonard Korea? This is going to be tight. Well, Riley's a very classy track runner as well. He's run great 10,000s on the track. Surely he's got the power and speed here. Who's going to be the unlucky 4th place or the worst place to finish? Andy Abderrahman now concedes 2nd spot to Jacob Riley. Leonard Korea is giving it all he's got in these closing stages. Galen Rupp the same. Come on, guys, I'm waiting for you. Who am I going to get on the plane to Tokyo with? Riley is going, and so is 43-year-old Andy Abderrahman. What a performance. A personal best for Riley in these conditions. What an amazing race.
I think it's one of the greatest moments in sport. I mean,
I'll take that.
It's just, it's super cool. Okay.
Yes, I guess I got excited watching that.
So
very exciting.
At the end of this race, right? So does like the Olympic Committee come and give you a jersey or what do they do at this point, right?
You cross the line and they give you a big American flag, that American flag right there. You get to wrap it around your shoulders, and then you walk up and down. You have to do some interviews and a bunch of other stuff. There's like 2 hours of stuff afterwards. So yeah, I mean the next slide there. I mean, the line with the American flag.
So you locked up on us again, Jake. You there? Hello, you there? Let's give him a second. We'll have him join us again.
Bridge.
1 second, guys. Jake? Let's give him a minute. Ralph, can you hear me? Ralph?
Yeah, we can hear you. Well, actually, Ralph is not here, but I am.
Oh,
Kathy's.
is that Kathy?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe while we're waiting for Jake to join us again, we can talk with you.
Okay.
So you guys went to the race, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That's
there's
what-
Jake.
There he is. He's back.
Jake, I'm busy interviewing your mom.
I hear that. I am so sorry.
Okay. No offense, Kathy, but I'm going to go back to Jake for a
Oh.
minute.
Completely understand. I'm off too.
Are you still there, Jake?
I'm still here.
Okay.
That's, yeah,
No, it's fine.
I don't know what to tell you.
Okay. Okay, so we were talking about post-race. And so like, yeah, so what, I mean, do you, all of a sudden, do you get swept up and the Team USA just takes care of you from this point?
Oh, not really. So, I guess technically I'm supposed to be getting a stipend or something like that. And I am on the Team USA mailing list, but because of the delay to the Olympics, a lot of that stuff has been pushed back. So I was supposed to go to a big marathon summit out in California. We were supposed to talk about racing conditions. You're supposed to get team processing where you get your uniform. I have filled out all my sizes for all the stuff, but pretty much everything has been delayed. So no, I'm still training on my own. I don't get a lot of support from USATF right now, other than kind of logistical stuff.
Okay. All right, so I have a list of, actually, let me go into your slideshow really quickly. Okay, so Jake, let's talk about training. Let's shift gears
Okay.
into that. Like, what goes into, you know, not only the major considerations that you have nutritionally and physiologically, but also like logistically, right? Like, how far in advance do you change your training regimes in order to prepare yourself for race day and then again for the next race day? So
Right.
go ahead.
So, yeah, I'm a marathoner, which means that my training is going to be a little bit different than what you might do for other distances. So marathon is over 2 hours long. So a lot of a typical training block for a marathon will start, depends on which program you use, but typically between 3 and 4 months out from the race. So you set up kind of, this is my goal race and I'm gonna train for this long. And that doesn't mean that I'm only training 4 months out of the year. But that just means that like all the training within this 4-month block is aimed towards being the best that I can be on race day. So if you want to go up 2 slides. Nope, other way. Keep going. Yeah. So marathon, a lot of what we're trying to do for the marathon is to make sure that I have enough energy and I'm fit enough to be able to keep going for as long as possible. So this is different energy sources. I don't know if you guys have talked about ATP or glycogen or any of this
We
kind of
did.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So those fuel sources are very short term. What you're trying to do in running is use this what's called aerobic energy, which is energy from fat. It's a much more energy abundant source. And so if you click it down 2 slides.
So when we look at this graph real quick, Jake, right here, this is like Usain Bolt, right?
Yeah.
He performs exclusively off glycolysis. Whereas when you shift gears and you're a bit slower for longer, you kick into this Krebs cycle, which allows you to perform for longer using a different method to convert to ATP.
Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of the technical side of it. What that means for my training is that I just do a lot of running. I run a lot. So during a typical marathon segment, when I was with the Hansons, we would run up to 130 miles a week. With this training group, I run more like 105 to 110. And most of that is what we call aerobic running. So I'm running at a pace where I could talk if I had to. And it's mostly about, keeping this what's called the aerobic threshold. So, this area where, you're getting essentially almost all of your energy from fats and other sources, because they're so energy dense, but they're also slow to charge. Now, we're also concerned about that anaerobic threshold there, which is where you switch from you switch energy sources to something that is it provides energy really quickly, but it doesn't last very long, and it'll end up you can't use it very long. So the way that our training goes is we start out a segment, and we're mostly focused on increasing that aerobic threshold. So we do lots of slower stuff. We do what's called tempos, which is at a certain 75% of the max of what we can do. And then as we move throughout the segment, we shift towards shorter and faster stuff to try and get that anaerobic threshold up, so that by the time I get to the final race, I'm doing very little mileage, but the mileage that I am doing is typically a lot quicker. And that kind of balance and that transition and figuring out what point to transition and the differences in volume, it goes into a lot of these different numbers. But essentially, I'm trying to make my anaerobic threshold as high as possible. So that means that I want to transition to anaerobic at as high a heart rate as possible, and at as fast a speed as possible. So I want to push that back as far as I can, because as soon as you go what's called anaerobic, you're going to start to tire a lot more quickly. So when I run a marathon, the first 18, 20 miles of the marathon, I'm trying to stay as relaxed as possible. And so, it's not actually a jog. It doesn't feel like a jog, but it's supposed to be as close to that as you can feel. So a lot of my training is about maintaining that part.
Jake, what pace would you say the first 20 miles you maintained for the race was?
Well, so Atlanta was a little bit weird because it's very hilly, but we averaged just under 5-minute miles.
Mm-hmm.
But you would have a downhill mile that would be like 4 minutes and 45 seconds. You'd have an uphill mile that'd be like 5 minutes and 10 seconds. But I ran 2:10, which averages out to, I think, 4 minutes and 57, 58 seconds or something like that,
mm-hmm.
for the overall average pace.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do a lot of our training at that pace, because one of the things you want to do is you want to get your body used to using energy at that particular pace. But in order you can't just do that pace, because if you did that every day, you would get tired. So you need to be able to recover. So one of the things that a lot of people forget about when they're training is that running really hard or doing something really difficult, you're hurting yourself. You're damaging your muscle. You're literally breaking blood vessels and doing all this damage. And you don't get stronger until your body has repaired that damage. And so we do a hard workout on Tuesday. We do a hard workout on Friday, and then a really long run on Sunday. And the other days are all about recovering from those runs, because you actually make improvement by recovering from the damage, because your body, the way our bodies respond to a stress, right? We hurt ourselves. And so our body's like, oh, this part's hurting. I need to make this part stronger. So your body comes in and rebuilds the tissue stronger than it was before. So I hurt my muscles and then I repair them when I'm resting. And so that's another reason that I do lots of longer, slower distance, as opposed to just running as hard as I can every single day.
So Jake, during the race, I would say, you're definitely more in the aerobic part, but for that last, when you were really sprinting at the end, would you say that you had reached an anaerobic point at the end of the race?
I have to imagine that because it's something I couldn't have held for very long. That was especially that last little downhill bit. That was about as fast as I could go at that point, and I couldn't have held it for much longer. But if you go up a slide.
Okay. Back here?
Yeah. So this is a copy of what's called a VO2 max test. So this is essentially what volume of oxygen I can deliver to my muscles. So this is a little bit of a measurement of just what's the maximum that I can do. And we don't need to really go into it, but essentially at the very end there, I was probably at my VO2 max. So as much oxygen as I could take in and put to my muscles, my body was doing that. And yeah, we're not going to go into.
Well, just as a kind of a technical point, I know it's kind of a bragging point for cyclists and long distance runners to have a really high VO2 max.
Yes.
So it's always been kind of fabled about Lance Armstrong's VO2 max was, something crazy. Like he was able to process oxygen at an insane rate.
Yeah, I was actually doing a little bit of research on it because, yeah, Lance is famous for that. I saw, had an 85. The highest ever recorded, I think, is somewhere in like the 90s or something like that.
And what is yours?
Well, that little circle there to the right of the picture is an 83.3.
Okay. And what was
So
Lance's?
85 is what I saw.
Okay.
Yeah,
Alright.
and so this is when I was 24 and I was training for the 10,000. I don't know what it would be now, but I would imagine I was pretty close to that for the marathon. I haven't been VO2 tested in a long time. Essentially, a VO2 test is they put you on a treadmill and they just make you run as hard as you can for as long as you can, and they see where you essentially can't go any harder. So it really sucks because you have this big mask on and it's pulling air out of like a tube, and yeah, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of these are just pictures from different races.
Another thing we talked about this week was blood lactate. Do you ever do anything, any kind of studies with that or measure that at all?
Well, on that same test, there's the respiratory exchange ratio, the RER, which is that third from the left column.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's essentially saying the higher that ratio is, the bigger the number, the more carbohydrate you're using.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're in closer to like the 70s or 80s, that means that you're using predominantly more fat sources, and those are going to be generating very little lactate. So yeah, I have found my lactate threshold. I've completely forgotten what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's essentially the point at which acid starts to build up in your muscles. We're not very scientific in the training that we do, or at least we don't go in for a lot of testing currently. Probably because a lot of this stuff has been figured out by other people. So we just know that this training works for me. We don't necessarily need to know why it's working. But yeah, you're certainly, so lactate threshold and anaerobic threshold are very closely related. I can't remember if there's actually a difference or if it's kind of the same thing. But yeah, essentially when you do anaerobic respiration, when your muscles aren't using oxygen to make energy, one of the byproducts of that is acid in your muscles. And if your body can't clear that acid out, then your muscles start to cramp up and they start being able to generate as much power. And so a lactate threshold is when your body starts to produce more acid that it can get rid of. And so another part of training is to try and push that lactate threshold as high as possible so you can run harder without generating that acid. And so that's what we call, so speed work is really interested in that. So if you're running fast for a short period of time, you're trying to increase your lactate threshold.
We studied earlier this week when runners hit the wall, right? It's and where I guess your blood lactate just gets to a point where your muscles can no longer function properly. Have you ever hit?
Or you run out of glucose.
Yes.
Right. So there's like you're hitting the wall or you're bonking, which are two kind of different things. I've done both. I've certainly hit the wall and I've also bonked. I would say bonking is even worse. Because you essentially, at least when you hit the wall, you can still kind of continue to run. Whereas when you bonk, you essentially just can't move your muscles anymore. You're completely done. So if anybody out there has like skipped lunch and then found themselves in the middle of the afternoon like feeling really shaky and like really weak and you can't focus on anything, that's kind of like what it means to bonk. You just don't have any more energy to send to your muscles.
You're done. Like you're not going to finish if you bonk.
Right. Well, I mean, you might finish, but it will be really, really ugly. You might have to crawl across the line. I've seen a couple people crawl at the end of the race.
So Jake, can you tell us a bit about what you eat? Tell us about your diet.
Yeah. I'm not really looking at what we might call the macros, so I don't worry too much about my ratio of like protein to carbohydrates to all this other kind of stuff. But I try to avoid, you might call it bags and boxes, so processed foods, as much as possible. So the big reason for that is that a lot of those more processed foods, so things that you might buy at the store that come in a bag or a box, they tend to have things in them that your body can use for energy but does not use very efficiently. So it, like for something like high fructose corn syrup, I'm sure you guys have heard of before, it provides a lot of energy, but that energy doesn't last for a very long amount of time, and your body doesn't store it very efficiently. So when you start to use it as an energy source, you get a good kick from it, and then it kind of goes away. So that's what you might call a sugar high and then a crash. Same thing what we call simple carbohydrates. So something like white bread, you get energy from it really, really quickly, but it doesn't last very long. So I focus on trying to get what we call complex carbohydrates. So ones that are harder for your body to break down, but that means they're going to get stored more efficiently and they're going to be a more efficient energy source. So I try to do what we call whole grains. So brown rice, whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta. I try to get a lot of pasta or protein. So like I said, when you exercise is about damaging muscles, well, your muscles, in order to build themselves, need protein. And so you can get that from a bunch of different sources. But especially types of meat are a really good place, beans, that sort of thing. So I try to make sure that I have some source of protein every meal, and then try to get a lot of vegetables in there as well, partly for all the nutrients that come with vegetables. We can go down a whole bunch of macros with that. But the other part is that eating vegetables makes you digest slower, and when you digest slower, you store more of the energy that you're taking in a place where it will last longer. I don't know, I'm oversimplifying about 3 months worth of biology class, and I also forgot a lot of it, but that's basically what it is.
Give us I'll tell you what, give us what the day before the race meals would look like for you. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, day before.
Yeah, so I keep breakfast pretty much the same almost every single day. I like to do, call it Irish cut or steel cut oatmeal with some banana, some blueberries, some peanut butter, some honey, and some yogurt in it. So lots of protein, lots of whole grains, and then some antioxidants and stuff.
Uh-oh, I think we lost Jake again.
Dinner is the one where I kind of get after it a little bit more. So I do lots of pasta with a red sauce, vegetables, a little bit of chicken. And that's kind of my protein of choice is chicken. And then morning of a race is, again, I'll eat a little bit less than I otherwise would. Running on a full stomach is really, really painful. So again, that kind of oatmeal dish, but maybe a little bit less than I would otherwise. The other big thing for a marathon, because it's so long, is you have to take in food and fluids while you're running. So I don't know if anybody out there has ever used goo gels, but they're essentially like little packets of paste that have really easy to digest energy in them. So I'll take one of those 5 minutes before a race, one of them 45 minutes in, and one of them an hour and a half in. And then also every 3 to 4 miles, I'm drinking liquids. So water plus electrolytes. So electrolytes are like potassium, sodium, a bunch of other nutrients. Essentially, when you sweat out nutrients, and you want to replace those. Otherwise, your body can't sweat. And if you can't sweat, you can't cool yourself down. And if you can't cool yourself down, you're going to get too tired. And so that's why it's harder to race when it's hot than it is when it's cold.
And it was hot in Atlanta, too, that day, right?
No, it was like 47 degrees.
Oh.
47 degrees and windy. It was perfect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's going to be hot in Japan. In Japan, it's supposed to be, I think, like 83 degrees with 80 to 85% humidity. So one of the things we're going to have to do getting ready for Japan is train in the heat a lot. So, exercises or training is all about getting yourself ready for the situation. And so if you run a lot in the heat, your body learns what it needs to do in the heat. So your sweat rate will go up, your sweat threshold. So the temperature at which you start to sweat, that will go down. So you start to sweat earlier so your body can cool yourself. It changes how much water you keep in your bloodstream. We want to be making a lot of those adaptations getting ready for Japan in a way that would be different from what we might do for like a winter marathon.
Something else I know that you've done in the past is trained at elevation.
Yeah, so here in Boulder, we're at 5,500 feet.
And back in Stanford, I think you guys would go to Mammoth. You would go to the places around Mammoth. How high would you train in those places?
So Mammoth Lakes itself is at, I think, 7,000 feet. Yeah, and so we would do some of our training there. So, oh boy, we're going to get into a whole bunch of different stuff. So basically, the higher up in elevation you go, the less oxygen there is. And if there's not very much oxygen, then your body needs to become more efficient at using the oxygen that you have. And so your body produces more cells that can help you process oxygen. So your erythropoietin, your hemoglobin, all these things increase if you don't have enough oxygen to get to. The problem is that you can't run as fast when there's not as much oxygen around. So when you train at altitude, you're getting a benefit from increasing the cells in your bloodstream, but your muscles aren't getting as challenged as they would be at a lower elevation. So I live here in Boulder, Colorado, which is, it's high, but it's not so high that I can't run fast. So it's kind of a happy medium. Some people will train really, really high or live really, really high. So they'll sleep at a high elevation, so like 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 feet. And then they'll do all their training at a lower elevation, 3,000 or 4,000 feet, so they can get the intensity, but also get the changes in your blood chemistry type of thing. But typically for longer distances, your biggest concern is how much oxygen can you transport and how well can you use that oxygen. And so training at altitude tends to be, it's going to make both of those things better, or should.
Did you notice a difference in Atlanta, like in the air?
Everybody tells me that when you go back to low sea level, it's going to feel great, and I've never noticed it all that much, which is really annoying, because when I come home for Christmas, I think I'm going to feel totally awesome, and I never do. The problem is that, like, in a marathon, you're essentially running as hard as you can eventually, and so even if running as hard as you can is faster than you would be before, like, it still hurts.
Okay. So Jake, I want to stick to our 45-minute time slot here. One thing I want to talk about, we spent a day this week discussing is psychology. What do you do? Is there anything like, that your coach works with you on, or you've kind of developed a strategy on for, mental kinds of preparation?
So a big part of training is just doing the training. So, it's easy to go run for a day. It can be really hard to stay motivated and do all the different things that I need to do for months at a time when I don't have a race. So a lot of what I do mentally is I visualize races. I try to get myself excited about the next race that I'm training for. The reason that I do this is because I love to race. I don't love to train. I think training is honestly, it's very boring and it's very painful. But it means that I get to race. And so a lot of what I do is, I try to focus on what are my goals. And so pretty much every athlete will talk to you about goal setting. So, I have, in the next couple months, I want to do this. In the next couple of years, I want to do this. And the only way that I get to do those things is if I do these things right now. And so focusing on that kind of stuff, another part of mental training is trying to get myself mentally prepared for when the race starts to hurt. So pretty much every race you're gonna hurt at some point. And when things start to hurt, that means you don't want to do them as much. And so you need to train yourself to be able to deal with that pain and kind of push through it. So a lot of our workouts are about trying to push yourself as hard as you can in practice, so that when you have to do that in a race, you're better at it. And so, I have little things that I'll repeat to myself in my head. So one of the things I told myself a lot during the Olympic marathon was no more next times. So I don't want to wait till the next time to be good. I want to be good this time. And then another big part of mental training is being ready to be nervous on the day. So anybody out there that's had a big game or a big test or had to do public speaking, you get really nervous and you feel all that adrenaline and you feel really shaky and jittery. And that's a good thing. That's your body saying, yes, I'm ready to go. I'm giving you energy. I'm ready to give you what you need. But it makes you feel a little bit sick. It doesn't feel very good. And so you want to be able to kind of manage that stuff. And one of the big things that I do is I try to have a routine. So, before I even get to a race, I know this is what I'm going to do 2 nights out. This is what I'm going to do the night before. This is when I'm going to go for a run. This is what I'm going to wear on the run. I've essentially planned out everything. And so instead of having to think, sort of worry about all the different things that I'm going to have to do on race day, I just have to think, what's the next thing in my step? What's the next thing in my plan? And that will kind of help me to be nervous, but not to have the nervousness overwhelm me. And then luckily, once you start the race, the nervousness typically goes away, because now your body's kind of got a place for all that adrenaline to go.
Were you nervous at the start line?
Yes, I was very, very nervous. So I was able to sleep before this race, which doesn't always happen. But yeah, I was very nervous. I was very, my hands weren't trembling, but it was pretty close. And so you just take some deep breaths and you try to think about something else. And again, you're just trying to focus on your process. But yeah, I mean, this is one of the biggest races of my entire career. So yeah, I was very nervous.
Okay, so I'm gonna put you on the spot. Can you beat Rupp?
Yes, I can.
Will you beat Rupp?
I am not going to go, especially since it's being recorded, I'm not going to go and throw that out there.
Well, I know
It's going to take some things going right for me and some things going wrong for him for me to beat him, I think. But I think I'm capable of beating Rupp, yeah.
So another quick thing I want to talk about too, just on the world stage, one of the big accomplishments that happened recently is that someone broke the 2-hour mark for the marathon. Like, as a runner who's run, you know, a 2:10, how fast is that? Like, is that unobtainable by most humans?
That is certainly unobtainable by most humans. So that's not something that I'm going to be able to do on a flat course ever. I can't imagine. Yeah, it's very, very impressive. I can't remember what his average mile pace comes out to. I think it's somewhere, I can't remember if it's under 440s, but it's very fast. So yeah, it's just something where you look at it and you just have to be impressed. I'm going to get to race that guy in Tokyo, so we'll see how that goes.
Where is he from?
He's from Kenya. Eliud Kipchoge from Kenya.
Would you say he is the top runner in the world right now?
Yes, yes. So he has, so that sub 2 hours was not officially a world record because he did some things different, but he also has the official world record. He's won a bunch of marathon majors. He's the defending Olympic champion. Yeah, he's by far the favorite.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're at 45 minutes now, Jake. Do you have any parting
I'm fine
words
staying a
for
little bit
us?
longer if you need. Sorry, say that again.
Do you have any parting words for us? Like, you know, a lot of my students are in middle school and high school now, and you know, would you encourage them to take track and to pursue track or cross country? And how has that kind of like led you to where you are? You know, did you go to Fairhaven?
I went to Fairhaven Middle School. Yeah,
Did
and I
you
did
run
track and
for?
field there.
You ran at Fairhaven.
Yep.
Okay, and then you went on to Seaholm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and those were positive experiences for you?
Oh, I loved it. I love track and field. I love running. But I will say, one of the reasons that I loved it is because I was good at it. I was good at it, and I enjoyed the process of doing it. And so, you know, running is also hard, right? Like if you have to do it for your soccer practice, like not everybody likes to go running. And you know, maybe you're more of a big, strong person that's better at throwing stuff. So I don't necessarily say that like you need to do running. I would say if you want a sport, cross country is fantastic. It's a team sport. It's a lot of fun. You get to go run through the woods. It's great, and you're gonna get fit, and it's been a huge part of my life, and I love it. But it's not going to be for everybody. But I would say that the thing that I would tell people to do is find something that you enjoy and try to get good at it. I think, you know, we like to do a lot of different things. Like it's fun to do a lot of different sports, and it's fun to try new stuff. And I still try and do that as well. But I think it's also really rewarding to try to be as good as you can be at one thing. And it, you know, I was a very small person in high school. I wasn't very popular. I was a little bit of a nerd, and I, you know, couldn't talk to girls or anything like that. But once I found running, and once I found something that I was good at and I could kind of take ownership of, it gave me a lot more confidence. And it doesn't have to be running. It can be, you know, maybe you're really good at the saxophone, or you're a really good artist, or whatever it is. But trying to be as good as you can be at one thing, I think, is a really rewarding and worthwhile endeavor. Even if you don't end up going to the Olympics in it or whatever it is, just trying to be as good as you can be. Try to find something that you enjoy that you can be as good as you can be at.
Yeah, you know, I've coached track in the past for middle school and high school, and I think a lot of kids just think of track and field as just running, right, or just the sprint, right? And so everybody in middle school wants to run the 100. But I always try to encourage the kids to run the longer distances, the 800 and the 1600. Were you the sprinter kid in middle school or the distance runner? No?
It was apparent very early on that I was not going to be good at sprinting. I mean, I like what I was going to be good at. And so, yeah, we certainly have definitions of what makes you fast. So one of the things that's just come up or has been making the rounds on the internet recently. So you guys have had to do the presidential fitness test. where you have to jump as high as you can. You have to run a mile. You have to run 100. All this other kind of stuff. And one of the things you have to do is the sit and reach, right? So you have to sit down. You have to reach as far forward as you can. And that was one of the reasons that I didn't win or I didn't get the Presidential Fitness Award, is because I couldn't even touch the ruler. My hamstrings were so tight that I couldn't touch the ruler. But I'm now an Olympian, and one of the things they're saying is that tight hamstrings actually make you more efficient at long distance running. So if you're not very stretchy, yeah, you might not be a good football player or a good basketball player, but you might be a fantastic runner or a triathlete. So, you can't. Some people say you can do whatever you put your mind to, or you can if you can dream it, you can achieve it, and that's not really true. But you can't be good at everything, but you can be good at something. And so finding what that is, it might not be what you originally thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to be a soccer player. I just was not good at soccer, but I'm really good at running, and I embraced that and became good at it. So if you're a big kid, go out for, well, maybe don't go out for football because you're going to hurt your brain, but go out for throwing or something like that, or wrestling. And
And back to the track and field thing too, is because I'd love to plug track and field, that track and field is more than running, it's throwing too. So I always encourage my
and
jumping, right? So don't just run. I encourage kids to do the shot put, to do the discus, to do the high jump, because there's so many different things that you can do.
And they don't have tryouts. So, if you didn't make the soccer team, or maybe you don't want to compete for your school soccer team, go out for track. It's fun.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden you have 100 friends, right? It's a really cool thing. So
my best friends throughout my entire life have been cross-country friends.
That's really cool. Okay, I'm going to unmute everybody just for a second. This has been super cool for you to join us today, Jake, and know that you have a huge fan base in Mount Vernon and in Bellingham. So when you come back to Bellingham, we'd love to see you in person in some capacity. Maybe you can come visit our classroom sometime in the future.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to unmute everybody just for a moment. We're going to say thanks to Jake for joining us today. Ready? Here we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Jake.
Thanks, guys. I hopefully wasn't too boring there in the middle, but sure. Thanks for coming out.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.